He never forgot the night he saw her, his maid, crying in the rain. That was the moment a billionaire's heart finally woke up. But that night? That night was still weeks away. Right now, Darius Cole didn't care about anyone but himself. At 34, he'd built an empire that most men only dream about. Tech contracts, real estate, investments that printed money while he slept. His penthouse overlooked the city like a throne, and everyone below existed just to serve him, including her. Amara Chun had worked in his home for 8 months. She arrived before dawn, left after dark, and stayed invisible, exactly how he liked it. She never spoke unless spoken to, never made eye contact, just cleaned, cooked, and disappeared into the walls like a ghost. He didn't know she had a daughter. He didn't know she walked 3 miles to work every morning because the bus fare meant choosing between dinner and rent. He didn't know anything about her because he never asked. To Darius, people like Amara were background noise. Replaceable. Forgettable. He paid her salary, and that was enough. Why should he care beyond that? His assistant, Greg, knew better than to bother him with staff issues. The kitchen could burn down, and Darius would just buy a new kitchen. Problems were solved with money, not attention. But storms don't care about money. It started as a regular Tuesday. Darius had meetings stacked back to back. Investors to impress, deals to close, egos to crush. He came home late, barking orders at Greg through his phone as he stepped into the marble foyer. The house smelled like lemon polish and fresh flowers. Everything gleamed. Everything perfect. Amara had just finished for the day. She stood near the door, pulling on a thin jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. Her hands trembled as she buttoned it. Darius walked past her without a glance. She whispered, "Good night, Mr. Cole." He didn't answer. Why would he? The door clicked shut behind her, and she was gone. Outside, the sky had turned savage. Rain hammered the pavement like bullets. Wind tore through the streets, ripping umbrellas inside out and sending trash cans rolling into traffic. The kind of storm that makes you grateful for a roof. Darius poured himself a drink and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city blur under sheets of rain. Lightning cracked the sky open. That's when he saw her, a small figure barely visible through the downpour, stumbling down the sidewalk. No umbrella, no car, just walking, no struggling against the wind. It took him a full 10 seconds to realize it was Amara. She looked so small out there, soaked through, hunched over like the rain was physically beating her down. She stopped under a broken streetlight, leaning against a wall, and that's when he saw it. She was crying. Not just rain on her face, actual tears mixing with the storm, her shoulders shaking as she covered her mouth with both hands like she was trying to hold the sobs inside. Something twisted in his chest. Something unfamiliar. He stood there, drink in hand, warm and dry, watching this woman, his employee, someone he saw every day but never truly saw, fall apart in the rain. And he did nothing. He told himself it wasn't his problem. She'd get home eventually. People dealt with rain all the time. Why should this be any different? But the image burned into his mind. Her face. The way she crumpled against that wall. The way she looked so utterly alone. He turned away from the window, drained his glass, and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easy that night. And the storm? The storm was just beginning. 3 days later, Darius destroyed her life over a vase. It was a Thursday morning. Amara arrived at 6, same as always, moving through the penthouse like a shadow. She cleaned the guest bathroom, vacuumed the hallway, and started dusting the living room, where Darius kept his collection. Not art, not family heirlooms, just expensive things he bought because other rich people said they mattered. The vase sat on a glass shelf near the window. Italian, hand-blown, worth more than Amara made in 3 months. Darius didn't even like it. He'd forgotten it existed until that morning. Amara reached up to dust the shelf above it. Her sleeve caught the edge. The vase tipped. She lunged for it, fingertips brushing glass, but gravity won. It hit the marble floor and exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces. The sound echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot. Amara dropped to her knees instantly, hands shaking as she tried to gather the shards. "No, no, no," she whispered, voice cracking. "Please no." Darius appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, eyebrow raised. "What happened?" Amara's voice came out strangled. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cole. I'll pay for it. I'll work extra hours, You'll pay for it?" Darius set his coffee down slowly. "Do you even know what that was worth?" She looked up at him, eyes wide and desperate. "I didn't mean to. Please. I need this job. I have a daughter. She's sick. I can't." "You should have thought about that before you broke my property." The words came out cold, casual, like he was commenting on the weather. Amara's face went pale. "Mr. Cole, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything." Greg had wandered in by now, sensing drama. A few other staff members hovered near the hallway, pretending not to watch. Darius didn't lower his voice, didn't pull her aside. He wanted an audience. "You're fired." 2 words. Simple. Final. Amara's breath hitched. "No. Please. You don't understand. My daughter needs medicine, the hospital bills. Not my problem." Darius checked his watch. "Greg, make sure she's out in 10 minutes. Deduct the vase from her final paycheck." "Sir," Greg started, uncomfortable. "That would leave her with." "Did I ask for your opinion?" Greg shut his mouth. Amara stayed on her knees, surrounded by shattered glass, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't do this." Darius looked down at her. This woman who'd scrubbed his floors, cooked his meals, made his life comfortable for 8 months, and felt nothing. Just inconvenience. 10 minutes, he repeated, and walked away. Behind him, Amara's sobs echoed through the penthouse. The other staff stood frozen, horrified. One of the younger housekeepers started crying. Greg ran a hand through his hair, jaw tight, but said nothing. Nobody said anything. Because in Darius Cole's world, you either obeyed or you left. Amara gathered her things in silence. No one helped her. No one dared. She walked to the door with her head down, shoulders shaking, clutching a small bag that held everything she owned from 8 months of work. At the door, she turned back one last time. Darius was already on his phone, laughing at something his lawyer said. He didn't even look at her. The door closed. She was gone. And Darius? He forgot about it by lunchtime. If you'd never treat someone that way, hit subscribe. Only the arrogant scroll past this. Greg stood in the living room, staring at the broken vase still scattered across the floor. "Want me to call the cleaning service?" he asked quietly. Darius waved a hand. "Get someone in here by tonight. I'm hosting dinner tomorrow." Greg nodded, but something in his expression shifted. Something dark. Something disappointed. He didn't say it out loud, but the thought was there. "You're going to regret this." 2 weeks passed like nothing happened. Darius hired a new maid within 48 hours. Younger. Quieter. She didn't break anything. He stopped thinking about Amara entirely. Until the night she came back. It was late, nearly midnight, and another storm had rolled in. Not as violent as the last one, but steady. The kind of rain that doesn't stop, just keeps falling like the sky's given up. Darius was in his study, halfway through a bottle of scotch, reviewing contracts he'd already approved twice. Restless. Irritable. He couldn't focus, and he didn't know why. Then he heard it. A sound at the gate. Faint. Almost swallowed by the rain. He ignored it at first. Probably an animal. Maybe a drunk stumbling past. Not his concern. But it came again. A soft, desperate knocking. Darius set his glass down and walked to the window that overlooked the front gate. What he saw made him freeze. Amara. She stood at the iron gate, both hands gripping the bars like she might collapse without them. Soaked to the bone. Hair plastered to her face. That same thin jacket clinging to her frame. doing nothing against the cold. And she was crying. Not the quiet kind. The kind that wrecks you. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and broken. She wasn't knocking anymore. Just standing there, forehead pressed against the gate, body shaking with sobs. Darius's hand moved to the glass, without thinking. Palm flat against the cold surface. His chest tightened. Why was she here? What did she want? Part of him, the old part, the part that fired her, without a second thought, wanted to call security. Have her removed. Trespassing. Problem solved. But he didn't move. He just stood there, warm and dry, behind bulletproof glass, watching her fall apart in the rain. She looked smaller than he remembered. Thinner. Like the last 2 weeks had hollowed her out from the inside. Her lips moved. She was saying something, but he couldn't hear through the storm and the glass. His hand curled into a fist against the window. Go outside. The thought came unbidden, sharp and insistent. Go get her. Bring her inside. Fix this. But his feet didn't move. Because what would he even say? Sorry? Sorry didn't pay medical bills. Sorry didn't undo humiliation. And what if she screamed at him? What if she cursed him out right there in the rain? What if she told him exactly what kind of monster he was? He wasn't ready for that. So he stood there, frozen, a coward behind glass. Amara lifted her head slowly, and for just a second, one terrible, searing second, her eyes found the window, found him. She couldn't possibly see him through the tinted glass. It was too dark, too far. But somehow, it felt like she was looking right into his soul. Her expression didn't change. No anger. No pleading. Just exhaustion. Pure, bone-deep exhaustion. Like she'd come here hoping for something, maybe kindness, maybe closure, and now realized there was nothing left to hope for. She let go of the gate, turned, and walked away. Back into the storm. Back into the darkness. Disappearing down the street like a ghost. Darius's breath fogged the glass. His hand was still pressed against it, fingers splayed wide. He stood there long after she was gone, rain blurring the world outside, and felt something crack inside his chest. Not guilt. Not yet. But something close. Something that whispered, "You did this." He pulled away from the window, grabbed his glass, and drained it in one burning gulp. But the image stayed. Her face. Her tears. The way she looked at him, or through him. That night, for the second time in his life, sleep didn't come. And when morning finally broke, the storm was gone. But the damage? The damage was just beginning. Morning came cold and gray. Darius woke on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, neck stiff and head pounding. The scotch bottle sat empty on the floor. He dragged himself upright, rubbing his face, trying to shake the fog from his brain. But the image was still there. Amara at the gate, crying, leaving. He told himself to forget it. Move on. She'd made her choice to come here, and he'd made his choice not to answer. Fair. Clean. Over. Except it wasn't. Something gnawed at him. A splinter under his skin he couldn't reach. He walked to the kitchen, poured coffee, stared at the rain-streaked windows. Greg appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, already running through the day's schedule. Morning meetings at 9. Investors at 11. Dinner with the... Cancel everything, Darius said quietly. Greg blinked. Sir. I said cancel it. All of it. Greg hesitated, studying him. Are you all right? Darius didn't answer. He was already walking toward the front door. Outside, the air smelled like wet concrete and earth. Puddles reflected the gray sky. Everything looked washed out. Tired. Darius approached the gate slowly. She'd been right here. Hands on the bars. Face against the iron. He scanned the ground, not sure what he was looking for. That's when he saw it. A small piece of paper, wedged between the gate and the stone pillar. Soaked through. Nearly transparent. He crouched down and picked it up carefully. The paper disintegrated at the edges, but most of it held together. It was a letter, handwritten, ink bleeding in places, words smudged but still readable. His name was at the top, Mr. Darius Cole. He unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was careful, precise, like someone had taken their time, chosen every word deliberately. Mr. Cole, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you even remember me. But I have to write it anyway, because I promised someone I would. 8 years ago, your father came to the hospital where I worked. He was alone, scared. The cancer had spread, and he knew he didn't have much time. I was just a nurse's aide. Nobody important. But he talked to me like I mattered, asked about my life, my dreams. He told me about his son, you. He said you were brilliant, driven, strong. But he worried you'd inherited his worst trait, believing people were only worth what they could give you. On his last night, he asked me to deliver a message if I ever met you. He said, "Tell my son that wealth without compassion is just loneliness dressed in expensive clothes. Tell him I'm sorry I taught him to value things more than people. Tell him it's not too late to be better than I was." I kept that message for 8 years. And when I started working for you, I thought maybe I'd find the right moment to share it. But I never did, because I realized something, Mr. Cole. You're not ready to hear it. Your father was wrong about one thing, though. You're not like him. You're worse. He at least had regrets. I'm leaving this at your gate because I can't carry his words anymore. They're yours now. Do with them what you want. I hope someday you understand what he was trying to save you from. Amara-chan. Darius read it twice, then a third time. The paper trembled in his hands. His father. The hospital. 8 years ago. He remembered that time. Vaguely. He'd been 26, building his first company. Too busy to visit much. His father died alone in a hospital bed, while Darius closed a deal in another city. He told himself it didn't matter. They hadn't been close. His father had been cold, distant, obsessed with success. Just like him. You're worse. The words hit like a fist to the gut. He at least had regrets. Darius's knees buckled. He sank down onto the wet pavement, letter clutched in both hands. And for the first time in 20 years, he cried. Not quiet tears. Not dignified grief. Ugly, choking sobs that tore out of him like something dying. Because she was right. His father had tried to warn him, tried to pass on one last piece of wisdom through a stranger's kindness. And Darius had fired her for breaking a vase. Greg found him there 10 minutes later, sitting in the rain, holding a disintegrating piece of paper like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. "Sir." Darius looked up, face wet, eyes red. "I need to find her." Darius ran. Not walked. Ran. Out the gate, down the street, rain soaking through his shirt within seconds. He didn't care. "Amara," he shouted, voice hoarse. "Amara." Nothing. Just empty streets. Parked cars. Closed shops. He kept running, scanning every corner, every alley. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He didn't stop. Amara. A few people stared. One old man asked if he was all right. Darius ignored him. He reached the intersection where he'd last seen her disappear into the storm. Stopped. Spun in a circle. Which way? Left? Right? Straight? He had no idea. His phone was back at the house. No way to call her. No contact information. He'd never bothered to get it. Of course he hadn't. Because employees didn't need to be reached. They just needed to show up. Darius bent forward, hands on his knees, gasping for air. The rain pounded his back. He looked down. Footprints. Faint impressions in the mud near the curb. Small. Heading east. He followed them. Block after block, the trail grew fainter. Washed away by rain. Mixed with others. Until finally, they vanished completely. Darius stood in the middle of an empty street, surrounded by buildings that all looked the same, and realized the terrible truth. She was gone, and he had no way to find her. No address. No phone number. No friends or family he could contact. She'd been in his home for 8 months, and he knew nothing about her. Not where she lived. Not where she came from. Not even her daughter's name. He'd treated her like furniture. And now she'd disappeared like smoke. Darius sank onto the curb, water pooling around him, and stared at the empty street. For once in his life, money couldn't fix what he'd broken. All the wealth in the world couldn't buy back time. Couldn't erase cruelty. Couldn't make someone forgive you when you didn't deserve it. He'd built an empire on control. But he couldn't control this. A bus splashed past, drenching him further. He didn't flinch. Just sat there alone, soaked to the bone, holding a letter that proved he'd become exactly what his father feared. If you'd go back for the person you hurt, comment, "We all deserve a second chance." Somewhere in the city, Amara was out there, struggling, hurting, maybe giving up. And Darius Cole, billionaire, empire builder, man who had everything, had never felt more powerless in his life. He stayed on that curb for an hour. Then slowly he stood, walked back home, every step heavier than the last. Greg met him at the door, eyes wide with concern. "Sir, you're—" "Get me everything," Darius said quietly. "Employment records, emergency contacts, anything we have on Amarichan." Greg nodded and disappeared. Darius peeled off his soaked shirt, grabbed a towel, and returned to his study. The letter sat on his desk, drying slowly, words still legible. "Tell him it's not too late to be better than I was." Darius picked it up again, read it one more time, and made a decision. It wasn't too late. It couldn't be. He'd find her, apologize, make it right, even if it took everything he had. Morning light filtered through the study windows. Darius hadn't slept. He sat at his desk, surrounded by papers Greg had pulled from HR files. Amara's employment application, tax forms, direct deposit information, all useless. The address listed was an apartment building demolished 6 months ago. The phone number disconnected. Emergency contact? Blank. She'd been a ghost even on paper. Greg hovered nearby, exhausted. "Sir, maybe we should try." "There has to be something," Darius muttered, rifling through the stack again. Nothing. Dead ends everywhere. He slumped back in his chair, rubbing his burning eyes. The letter sat beside him. He'd read it so many times the words were burned into his memory. He picked it up again. Not to read, just to hold. That's when he noticed it. The paper, now dry, had a strange texture near the bottom. Almost like— He held it up to the light. A watermark. Faint. Nearly invisible, unless you knew to look for it. Letters pressed into the fiber of the paper itself. St. Gabriel Community Shelter. Hope for all. Darius's heart kicked into gear. He flipped the letter over. Nothing else. Just those words, hidden in the weave of the page. Greg. "Sir. St. Gabriel Community Shelter. Find it. Now." Greg's fingers flew across his tablet. "Got it. Downtown. About 4 miles from here. Opens at 7 a.m. Darius checked the time. 6:43. He was already moving. Jacket. Keys. Out the door before Greg could follow. The drive took 9 minutes. He parked illegally, didn't care. The shelter was a low brick building wedged between a laundromat and a boarded-up grocery store. Faded paint. Bars on the windows. A hand-painted sign above the door. A line of people already waited outside. Worn faces. Tired eyes. People the city had forgotten. People like Amara. Darius approached the door just as a woman in her 60s unlocked it from inside. "We open in 10 minutes, she said kindly. "You can wait with—" "I'm looking for someone." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Amarichan. She might have come here recently." The woman's expression shifted. Guarded. Protective. "We don't give out information about our guests. Please." Darius stepped closer. "I need to find her." He stopped. Swallowed hard. I hurt her, and I need to make it right. The woman studied him for a long moment. You're Cole, she said quietly. The one who fired her. His stomach dropped. She told you. Didn't have to. She came in 2 weeks ago, crying, no job, no money. Doesn't take a genius. Darius's throat tightened. Is she here? The woman's face softened. Just slightly. Not anymore. His world tilted. But, she added, I know where she went. Hope flickered. Small. Fragile. But real. Tell me, Darius whispered. Please. The woman looked at him. Really looked at him. Searching for something. Then slowly, she stepped aside. Come in. We need to talk. The woman's name was Sister Margaret, though she wasn't actually a nun. Just someone who'd spent 40 years caring for people nobody else wanted to see. She led Darius through the shelter's narrow hallways. Peeling paint. Fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with coffee and something cooking in the kitchen. She stayed here for 3 days, Margaret said, voice low. Ate 1 meal a day. Refused the bed. Said someone else needed it more. Darius's chest tightened. Where is she now? Working. Working where? Margaret stopped at a doorway and gestured inside. Darius looked. The room was full of children. 20, maybe 30 of them. All ages. Some playing with donated toys. Others coloring. A few just sitting quietly, eyes too old for their faces. And there, in the center of it all, kneeling on the floor beside a little boy with a bandaged arm. Amara. She was reading to him. Voice soft. Patient. The boy leaned against her shoulder, completely trusting, while she pointed to pictures in a worn storybook. Darius forgot how to breathe. She looked different. Thinner, yes. More tired. But there was something else. Peace. Even here, surrounded by broken things and broken people, she looked more at home than he'd ever seen her in his penthouse. She volunteers 6 days a week, Margaret said quietly. Won't take payment. Says helping is payment enough. Darius stared. This was the woman he'd humiliated. Fired. Left crying in the rain. And she was here, giving everything she had to kids who had nothing. The district she's in, Margaret continued, used to be a neighborhood. Families. Small businesses. Then your company bought it. Darius's blood went cold. The development deal, he whispered. You remember. Of course he remembered. 3 years ago. Prime real estate. He'd bought out the entire block, demolished everything, and built luxury condos that sat half empty because nobody could afford them. He displaced hundreds of families, including, he now realized, probably some of the people in this very shelter. I didn't, he stopped. Because what could he say? He didn't know? He didn't care? Both were true. Both were damning. Margaret watched him with something that wasn't quite pity. She doesn't know you're here yet. Should I? That's up to you, Mr. Cole. But if you're here to make yourself feel better, save us both the time and leave. Darius opened his mouth. Closed it. What was he here for? Forgiveness? Redemption? To prove he wasn't the monster she'd called him? He didn't know. Before he could answer, Amara looked up. Their eyes met. Across the room. Through the noise and movement. Just the two of them, locked in a moment that stretched impossibly long. Her expression didn't change. No shock. No anger. Just recognition. Like she'd known he'd come eventually. The little boy tugged her sleeve, asking something. She turned back to him, answering with a gentle smile, and continued reading. She didn't acknowledge Darius again. Didn't invite him in. Didn't tell him to leave. Just went back to her work, like he was a stranger passing on the street. And somehow, that hurt worse than anything she could have said. Margaret touched his arm. She finishes in an hour. If you want to wait. Darius nodded, throat too tight to speak. He found a plastic chair in the hallway and sat. The shelter moved around him. People coming and going. Staff offering help. Volunteers serving food. A whole world he'd never noticed. A world his money had helped destroy. He sat there for 53 minutes, watching through the doorway as Amara read stories, wiped tears, bandaged scraped knees, and helped children who had nowhere else to go. She never looked at him once. But he couldn't look away. Finally, she stood, said goodbye to the kids, and walked toward the hallway. Toward him. She stopped a few feet away, hands clasped in front of her, face calm, guarded. Mr. Cole. Her voice was steady. No tremor. No emotion. Like he was just another visitor. Darius stood. His voice cracked. I need to talk to you. Amara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. 5 minutes. They stepped outside into the alley behind the shelter. Gray light. Dumpsters. The smell of rain-soaked concrete still lingering from days ago. Darius had rehearsed this. Planned what he'd say. How he'd explain. But standing here, facing her, every word evaporated. I'm sorry. It came out raw. Desperate. Amara didn't react. I was wrong, he continued. Words tumbling out faster now. About everything. The vase, firing you, treating you like, he stopped. Forced himself to say it. Like you didn't matter. Still nothing. I read your letter. About my father. What he told you. And you were right. About all of it. I'm worse than he was, because I don't even have the excuse of not knowing better. I just didn't care. His voice broke. But I care now. I do. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that Mr. Cole. Her voice cut through his rambling. Quiet but firm. He stopped. Amara looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Do you remember what you said to me? When I begged you not to fire me. Darius's stomach twisted. Not my problem. That's what you said. The words hit like stones. You didn't ask why I needed the job. Didn't care that my daughter was sick. You just erased me. Like I was nothing. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I know, and You stood at your window and watched me cry in the rain. Darius froze. You saw me, Amara continued, still calm, still steady. That night. At your gate. I saw your shadow in the window. You were there. And you chose to do nothing. He couldn't breathe. So when you say you're sorry now, Mr. Cole, what I hear is, you're sorry it finally bothered you. You're sorry you feel guilty. But you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry it caught up with you. That's not, he stopped. Because maybe it was true. At least partly. Amara stepped closer. Not threatening. Just present. The rain stopped a long time ago, she said softly. You don't need to stand in it anymore. The line landed like a punch to the chest. What does that mean? It means you came here to feel better, to fix your conscience, to turn me into your redemption story. Her eyes never wavered. But I'm not here to forgive you, Mr. Cole. I'm here because these kids need someone. And that's bigger than you and me and your guilt. Darius opened his mouth, closed it. What could he say? She was right. He'd come here for himself, to ease his pain, to prove he could change. But change wasn't a transaction. Forgiveness wasn't something you earned in one conversation. Amara turned to go. Wait, Darius said. Please. Tell me what I can do to make this right. She paused, looked back. You want to make it right? Yes. Anything. Amara's expression softened. Just slightly. Rebuild what you broke, Mr. Cole. Then she walked back inside, leaving him alone in the alley. 3 days later, Darius returned. This time, he brought blueprints. Margaret met him at the door, eyebrows raised. Mr. Cole. I need to see Amara. Please. Something in his voice made Margaret pause. Then she nodded and led him to the small office in the back. Amara was sorting donation forms, a half-eaten sandwich beside her. She looked up when they entered. Mr. Cole. No warmth. But no hostility either. Darius spread the blueprints across the desk. I bought back the land. Amara blinked. What? The neighborhood I destroyed. The development project. I bought it back. All of it. He pointed to the drawings. These are housing plans. Affordable units. Community centers. Green spaces. I want to rebuild what I tore down. Amara stared at the blueprints. Then at him. Why? Because you were right. I broke something. And I need to fix it. She was quiet for a long moment, studying the plans. Then she pushed them back toward him. No. Darius froze. What? I'm not going to praise you for this, Mr. Cole. Her voice was steady. You want me to tell you this makes you a good person? That one project erases everything else? It doesn't work that way. I'm not asking for. Yes, you are. She stood. You came here expecting me to smile and thank you. To tell you you're redeemed. But redemption isn't a building project you can finish and check off a list. The words stung because they were true. Darius's shoulders sagged. Then what do I do? Amara looked at him for a long time. Rebuild yourself first. The room went silent. I don't understand. You think fixing buildings fixes people? She gestured toward the shelter. These families don't just need homes, Mr. Cole. They need to believe someone sees them as human, that they matter, that their suffering isn't just collateral damage for someone else's profit. She picked up the blueprints, studied them again. This. She tapped the paper. This is a start. But if you do it to feel better about yourself, it's worthless. If you do it for PR, for headlines, for your image, it's worse than worthless. It's just another way to use people. Darius felt something crack inside him. So, what do you want from me? I don't want anything from you. Amara's voice softened. But, if you really want to change, stop performing. Stop trying to buy forgiveness. Just do the work. Without cameras. Without applause. Without needing me or anyone else to tell you you're a good person now. She handed the blueprints back. Build the homes. But don't do it for me. Do it because it's right. And figure out who you are when nobody's watching. Darius took the papers with shaking hands. Will you help? Help you feel better about yourself? No. Help the people who need homes. Amara paused. If you actually do this, really do it, not just throw money at contractors, then yes. I'll make sure the families get what they need. But I'm not doing it for you. I know. She searched his face, looking for something. Sincerity, maybe. Or just proof that he understood. Finally, she nodded. There's a volunteer build next week. Community project. We're fixing houses in the old district. If you show up, bring work gloves. Not a checkbook. I'll be there. Amara turned back to her desk. We start at 6 a.m. Darius left the shelter with blueprints under his arm and a weight in his chest that felt somehow lighter than before. He didn't have her forgiveness, didn't have redemption, but he had a direction. And for the first time in his life, that felt like enough. 6 a.m. came cold and brutal. Darius showed up in jeans and boots he'd bought the night before. Work gloves tucked in his pocket. No driver. No assistant. Just him. The site was chaos. 20 volunteers already moving. Carrying lumber, mixing concrete, measuring foundations. Organized chaos. But chaos nonetheless. Amara stood near a half-built frame, directing traffic with a clipboard. She saw him. Nodded once. Pointed to a pile of 2x4s. Those need to go to the back lot. Find Trevor. He'll tell you what to do next. No welcome. No special treatment. Just work. Darius grabbed the lumber and started hauling. Trevor was a guy in his 50s with calloused hands and a no-nonsense attitude. He took one look at Darius's clean gloves and grunted. Ever swung a hammer? Not really. Great. You're on roofing. The next 8 hours were the hardest of Darius's life. His hands blistered within the first hour. His back screamed by hour 3. By hour 5, he could barely lift his arms. But he didn't stop. He hammered shingles until his shoulders burned. Carried supplies until his legs shook. held beams steady while others secured them, sweat pouring down his face. Nobody cut him slack. Nobody cared who he was. He was just another pair of hands. And not even particularly useful ones. Around noon, one of the volunteers, a younger guy in a college hoodie, whispered to his friend loud enough for Darius to hear. "That's Darius Cole, the billionaire." "No way. I'm serious. Google him." Phones came out. Whispers spread. By lunch break, everyone knew. Darius sat on a stack of plywood, gulping water, and felt the stares. Two women talked nearby, not bothering to lower their voices. "He's doing this for PR, guaranteed. Probably has a camera crew somewhere. Rich people don't actually care. They just want to look good." Each word was a nail driven deeper. Darius wanted to defend himself, to explain that he was trying, that he meant it. But what could he say that wouldn't sound exactly like what they expected? So he said nothing, just finished his water and went back to work. By the end of the day, 3 houses had frames. Foundations poured. Real progress. Darius's hands were destroyed. Blisters on top of blisters. His whole body ached like he'd been hit by a truck. But something else happened too. He'd built something. Not paid someone to build it. Not designed it from an office. Actually built it with his own hands. And it felt real. Amara found him as people were packing up. "You showed up." He looked up exhausted. "You said to. Most people say they will. Then they don't." She handed him a first aid kit. "For your hands. You'll need it." Darius took it. "Thank you." Amara studied him. "They're talking about you. The volunteers." "I know. Saying you're here for show." "I know that too. Does it bother you?" Darius thought about it. "Honestly. Yeah," he admitted. "But I get why they think that. I'd think the same thing." Amara nodded slowly. "So why'd you stay?" "Because." He looked at the houses. Raw and unfinished, but real. "Because it doesn't matter what they think. It matters that the work gets done." For the first time since he'd met her, Amara smiled. Small. Barely there. But real. "Same time next week. I'll be here." She walked away, and Darius let himself collapse against the plywood. Every muscle screamed. His hands throbbed. But somewhere under the pain, there was something new. Pride. Not the kind he was used to, the pride of closing deals, crushing competitors, building empires. This was different. Quieter. The pride of knowing he'd helped build something for someone else. Trevor walked past, then stopped. "You did all right, Cole." Darius looked up, surprised. "Your technique's garbage," Trevor continued. "But you didn't quit. That counts for something." Then he was gone. Darius sat there as the sun set, painting the half-built houses in gold. People were still whispering, still doubting. And maybe they were right too. Maybe this was just the beginning. Maybe he'd fail. Maybe he'd slip back into old habits. But tonight he'd shown up. He'd worked. He'd bled. And nobody, not the whispers, not the doubts, not even his own voice telling him he didn't deserve this. Nobody could take that away. He pulled out his phone, stared at it, then put it away without calling his driver. He'd take the bus home. It was time to see the city the way Amara did, the way real people did, from the ground up. The boardroom was dead silent when Darius walked in. 12 faces, all watching, all waiting. He'd missed 3 investor meetings, canceled 2 major deals, hadn't returned calls in 2 weeks. His CFO, Patricia, wouldn't make eye contact. His lawyers looked nervous. And at the head of the table, where Darius usually sat, was Vance Calder. Darius stopped in the doorway. Vance smiled. Not friendly. Predatory. "Darius, so glad you could join us." Vance Calder was everything Darius used to be. Sharp suits. Sharper instincts. A corporate shark who smelled blood in the water and went straight for the throat. He'd been Darius's mentor once. Taught him how to close impossible deals. How to destroy competitors without mercy. How to win At any cost. Vance. Darius's voice was flat. What are you doing in my chair? Your chair. Vance leaned back, fingers steepled. Funny. The board seems to think it's their chair, and they've asked me to sit in it while we discuss some concerns. Darius looked around the table. Concerns. Patricia finally spoke. Darius, you've been absent. The Singapore deal fell through because you didn't show up to the signing. We've lost 3 major clients because you're not returning calls. I've been working on the housing project. The charity project, Vance corrected, voice dripping with disdain. The one that's costing us millions and earning us nothing. It's not about earning. Everything is about earning. Vance stood, buttoning his jacket. That's business, Darius. Or did your little construction hobby make you forget? The room tensed. Darius stepped forward. That construction hobby is rebuilding homes for families we displaced. Families you displaced, Vance said. 3 years ago. When you were smart. When you understood that progress requires sacrifice. You mean when I didn't care who I hurt? Exactly. Vance smiled wider. And it made you rich. But now you're playing hero. Building houses. Swinging hammers. Trying to save your soul. He circled the table slowly. And you know what's happening while you do that? Your empire is crumbling. My company is fine. Your company is bleeding money. Vance dropped a folder on the table. Financial reports spilled out. All red. Stocks down 18%. Investors are nervous. Competitors smell weakness. Darius looked at the numbers. His stomach dropped. This is temporary. Once the project what? Saves your conscience? Makes you feel like a good person. Vance leaned on the table. Darius, I taught you better than this. Empires aren't built with empathy. They're built with strength, with vision, with the willingness to do what others won't. You mean the willingness to destroy people? If necessary? Yes. The word hung in the air like poison. Darius looked around the table, searching for support, for someone to push back. Nobody met his eyes. So what is this? Darius asked quietly. A vote of no confidence. Not yet, Vance said. This is a warning. Get your priorities straight. Drop the charity work. Focus on business. Or the board will be forced to make changes. Changes. Leadership changes. The threat was clear. Darius's jaw tightened. And if I refuse? Vance's smile disappeared. Then you learn a very expensive lesson about loyalty. Corporate loyalty. The kind that's tied to profit margins, not feelings. He walked to the door, then paused. I built you, Darius. Taught you everything you know. And I can dismantle you just as easily. Vance left. The room stayed silent. Patricia finally spoke. Darius, he's not wrong about the numbers. I know. So what are you going to do? Darius looked at the financial reports. The red numbers. The evidence of his empire bleeding out. Then he thought about Amara. About the shelter. About the houses they were building. About Trevor saying, you didn't quit. That counts for something. He gathered the papers and dropped them in the trash. I'm going to keep building. Patricia's eyes widened. Darius. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're choosing strangers over your own company. Darius headed for the door. Stopped. Looked back. Maybe that's the point. Then he walked out, leaving 12 shocked faces behind. Outside, his phone buzzed. A text from Amara. Supplies arrived. See you tomorrow at 6. Darius smiled. For the first time in weeks, he knew exactly where he needed to be. And it wasn't in that boardroom. 1 week later, they called an emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance. Darius showed up with dirt under his fingernails and sawdust in his hair. He'd come straight from the build site. The board looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Vance sat at the head of the table again. This time he didn't smile. Darius. Sit. I'm fine standing. Sit. Down. Darius sat. Vance slid a document across the table. Read it. Darius scanned the page. Legal jargon. Corporate speak. Then he found the key phrase. Temporary removal of executive authority, pending psychological evaluation and financial review. His blood ran cold. You're trying to remove me from my own company. We're protecting the company, Patricia said quietly. From you. Darius looked around the table. People he'd worked with for years. People he'd made wealthy beyond imagination. Not one looked guilty. You think I'm crazy, he said flatly. We think you're compromised, Vance replied. Emotionally unstable. Making decisions based on guilt instead of logic. I'm making decisions based on being a decent human being. And decent human beings don't build empires. Vance leaned forward. You're soft now, Darius. Weak. And weakness is contagious. If we let you continue like this, the whole company collapses. So you're staging a coup. We're staging an intervention. Darius stood. No. Sit down. I said no. His voice echoed through the room. You want control? Fine. Take it. I'm done. The room went silent. Patricia blinked. What? You heard me. I'm stepping down. Voluntarily. Right now. Vance's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Try me. Darius pulled out his phone, called his lawyer. Put it on speaker. Draft my resignation. Effective immediately. I'm walking away from all executive roles. His lawyer's voice crackled through. Darius, are you sure? Do it. He hung up. The board stared in shock. You're walking away from billions, Vance said slowly. For what? A construction project? A maid who doesn't even like you. Darius leaned on the table, looking Vance dead in the eye. I'm walking away because I finally figured something out. This. He gestured around the room. This isn't power. It's a prison. And I've been locked in it so long I forgot what freedom looked like. You're insane. Maybe. But I'd rather be crazy and free than rich and dead inside. He straightened. The housing project continues. With or without company funding. I'll finance it myself if I have to. And if that bankrupts me, he shrugged. Then I'll rebuild from nothing. At least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Vance stood slowly. You'll regret this. I already regret plenty. This won't make the list. Darius walked toward the door. Darius, Patricia called. If you do this, there's no coming back. He paused. Turned. Good. Then he left. Left the boardroom. Left the building. Left behind everything he'd spent 15 years creating. And felt lighter than he had in his entire life. If you'd stand up to power like this, hit subscribe. Cowards stay silent. The kind take action. Outside, the city hummed around him. No driver waiting. No assistant scheduling his next move. Just him. And a choice about what came next. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Billionaire Darius Cole steps down from Empire. Shareholders panic. He deleted it without reading further. Another text came through. Amara. Framing crew needs help tomorrow. You coming? Darius typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Then he started walking. Not toward his penthouse. Toward the shelter. Toward the work that mattered. Toward the man he was trying to become. Behind him, in that glass tower, Vance watched from the window. And smiled. Not because Darius had walked away. But because now nothing stood between Vance and total control. And Vance Calder always had a plan. A plan that didn't include mercy. Or housing projects. Or second chances. The game had just begun. And Darius had no idea what was coming. It happened at dawn. Amara arrived at the shelter at 5:30. Same as always. Coffee in hand. List of tasks for the day already mapped out in her head. The morning was quiet. Peaceful. Too peaceful. She noticed it as she rounded the corner. The silence. Usually there were sounds. Birds. Traffic. The distant hum of the city waking up. But today, nothing. Then she saw them. 3 bulldozers. parked in front of the shelter. Engines off, but ready. And standing beside them, clipboard in hand, was a man in a hard hat talking to a construction foreman. Amara's heart stopped. She ran. What's going on? The man looked up. Mid-40s. Bored expression. Demolition crew. We're clearing the site. Clearing what site? This is a shelter. He checked his clipboard. Says here it's condemned property. Scheduled for demo. Should have been notified weeks ago. Nobody notified us of anything. Not my problem, lady. We got permits. Legal orders. Building comes down today. Amara's hand shook. You can't. There are families inside. Children. Then you better get them out. He turned to his crew. We start in 30 minutes. Amara grabbed his arm. Please. We need more time. Just a few days to relocate. Lady, I got a schedule. Boss says it comes down today. It comes down today. Who's your boss? The foreman shrugged. Some corporate guy. Calder, I think. The name hit like ice water. Vance Calder. Amara's mind raced. This wasn't random. This was revenge. Revenge against Darius for walking away. And she was the collateral damage. She ran inside, started waking people up. Frantic. Desperate. Everyone up. Now. We have to evacuate. Confusion. Fear. Parents grabbing children. People scrambling for belongings. Sister Margaret appeared, half-dressed. What's happening? They're tearing it down. We have 30 minutes. Margaret's face went pale. They can't. They are. Outside, the bulldozers roared to life. Amara helped carry kids out. Blankets. Bags. Whatever people could grab. The families huddled on the sidewalk, watching in horror as their safe place prepared to die. One mother clutched her toddler, sobbing. Where do we go? Amara had no answer. The foreman approached. Everyone out. Please. Just give us one more day. Time's up. He climbed into the lead bulldozer. Amara stood in front of it. Move, lady. No. I'll run you over. Then do it. They stared at each other. The foreman's radio crackled. A voice came through. Boss says proceed. Don't let anyone delay it. Vance's voice. Cold. Final. The foreman sighed. Last chance. Move. Amara's knees shook, but she stayed planted. The engine revved. Someone screamed. And then, rain. It started as drops. Then sheets. A storm rolling in fast and violent, like the universe itself was furious. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning split the sky. And through the rain, headlights appeared. A car screeched to a stop. The door flew open. Darius stumbled out, soaked instantly, eyes wild. Stop. The bulldozer paused. Darius ran toward them, slipping on wet pavement, barely catching himself. He looked at Amara, at the families, at the shelter, and understood everything in one terrible moment. Vance, he whispered. Amara nodded. Darius turned to the foreman. You work for Calder? Yeah. So, tell him Darius Cole says if one brick falls, I'll bury him. The foreman laughed. You got no power anymore, man. Heard you walked away. Darius's jaw clenched. Because he was right. He had no company, no authority, no leverage, just rage, and a promise he couldn't keep. The rain came down like judgment. Darius stood between the bulldozer and the shelter, arms spread, water streaming down his face. You're not doing this. The foreman leaned out of the cab. Get out of the way, or I'm calling the cops. Call them. Behind Darius, Amara organized the families, getting kids under awnings, covering them with whatever they could find. But there was nowhere to go. No backup plan. Just rain and machines and the wreckage of hope. The foreman's radio crackled again. Vance's voice, tinny but clear. What's the delay? Cole's here. Standing in front of the equipment. A pause. Then, run him over. The foreman blinked. Sir. You heard me. He has no legal standing. He's trespassing. Proceed with demolition. The foreman looked at Darius. Hesitated. I'm not running anyone over, man. Then you're fired. I'll find someone who will. The radio went dead. Darius's phone rang. He answered. Vance's voice poured through, smooth and venomous. You really thought you could walk away without consequences? This isn't about me. You're hurting innocent people. I'm making a point. You chose weakness. Now watch what weakness costs. Vance, please. Begging doesn't suit you, Darius. Remember when you taught me that? Oh, wait, I taught you. Lightning flashed, illuminating everything in stark white. The families huddled together, terrified. Amara stood with the children, shielding them with her body, rain soaking through her clothes. She looked at Darius, not with hope, not with expectation, just acknowledgement, like she'd known this moment would come, like she'd known he couldn't save them. Darius's heart shattered. Vance, stop. I'll come back. I'll drop the housing project. Whatever you want. Just leave the shelter alone. Too late. It's not. It is. You made your choice. Now live with it. Or more accurately, watch them live with it. Vance hung up. Another bulldozer started moving, creeping forward slowly, toward the shelter, toward the families, toward everything Darius had tried to protect. He ran toward it, waving his arms. Stop. The driver ignored him. Amara screamed. Get the kids back. Back. People scrambled, slipping in mud. Parents carrying children. Elderly folks struggling to move fast enough. The bulldozer's blade touched the shelter's wall. Concrete cracked. A woman screamed. Darius threw himself in front of the machine. It stopped inches from him. The driver leaned out. Dude, move. I got orders. So do I. Darius's voice was raw. I'm not letting you destroy this. You don't have a choice. I have this choice. Thunder boomed, so loud it felt like the world was splitting open. Darius stood there, arms spread, rain hammering him, staring down a machine that could crush him without effort. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. Not of losing, not of dying, not of being powerless. Because this wasn't about power. It was about doing the right thing even when it cost everything. The driver cut the engine, climbed down. I'm not killing you, man. They don't pay me enough for that. He walked away. The other drivers followed. One by one, the engines died. The bulldozers sat silent. Darius collapsed to his knees in the mud, gasping. Amara ran to him, knelt beside him. You're insane. He looked up at her, rain and tears mixing on his face. I'm trying. She almost smiled. Almost. Then her expression changed. Behind you. Darius turned. A black SUV pulled up. Door opened. Vance stepped out, umbrella in hand, perfectly dry. Well, that was dramatic. Darius stood slowly. Vance. Relax. I'm not here to bulldoze anything. He looked around at the scene. The families. The shelter. The chaos. Just wanted to see it for myself. Wanted to see what you're willing to lose everything for. He walked closer. You know what I see, Darius? Weakness. Sentiment. Everything I taught you to avoid. You taught me to be a monster. I taught you to win. Vance's eyes were cold. And you threw it away for this? For people who'll forget you the moment you stop being useful. Amara stood. He's worth more than you'll ever understand. Vance looked at her like she was an insect. And you're the maid who started all this. The one who made him soft. I didn't make him anything. I just showed him what he'd become. Vance smiled. How poetic. Doesn't change reality. The shelter's condemned. Legally. Properly. Even if I don't demolish it today, the city will. You've got maybe a week. Darius's stomach dropped. There has to be. There's nothing. It's over. You lost. Vance turned to leave. Enjoy your moral victory, Darius. I'll enjoy your company. He got back in the SUV and drove away. The rain began to slow. The family stood shivering, homeless, hopeless. Darius looked at Amara. "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't. You tried. That's more than most would do." "It wasn't enough. It never is." She looked at the shelter. "But we keep trying anyway." The rain stopped, leaving only wreckage, and one question burning in Darius's mind. What now? The rain had stopped, but the shelter stood condemned due to a simple tax lien. Darius, out of funds, realized his physical sacrifice had only bought minutes, not salvation. Amara then revealed her true strategic move. She had anticipated a hostile corporate maneuver months ago. When she was his maid, she had quietly registered herself as the primary administrative executor of the defunct Singapore Trust, a crucial $2 billion holding. This one legal loophole, ignored by Darius in his arrogance and completely missed by Vance in his haste, gave Amara the ultimate leverage. Darius, humbled, handed her his phone. Amara called Vance, informing him that she, the former maid, controlled the $2 billion deal needed to stabilize his new corporate leadership. Amara demanded that Vance immediately transfer the shelter deed, free and clear, to the Chun Community Trust and pay for the initial construction of the housing project. If he refused, she would legally sign the $2 billion over to a nonprofit foundation, collapsing Vance's control and exposing him to massive shareholder lawsuits. Vance, trapped and desperate, was forced to accept the terms. The moment marked Darius's true transformation. He was no longer the decision-maker but the partner, utterly trusting Amara's quiet power. If you'd stand with them in the storm, comment, kindness wins. Those who wouldn't never will. Vance Calder arrived 45 minutes after the ultimatum, his rage barely contained, his perfectly tailored suit looking out of place against the mud and the rising sun. He was alone, desperate, having been abandoned by his own legal team, who instantly recognized the disaster Amara had engineered. He signed the documents on the hood of his taxi. The shelter deed was transferred to the Chun Community Trust, and the check for the initial construction costs was paid. He signed the non-disclosure agreement, sealing his humiliation. Amara, in turn, handed him the signed Singapore transfer form. "You won the company, Vance," Amara stated, her voice quiet but absolute. "But you lost the game." Vance took the paper, his victory feeling like ash. He stared at Darius, searching for a sign of regret, a crack in the billionaire who had walked away. "I still don't understand," Vance seethed. "You had everything. Why did you walk away from all of it?" Darius looked at Amara, then at the building they had saved, and smiled, a sincere, easy expression Vance couldn't possibly imitate. "You taught me that wealth without compassion is just loneliness," Darius replied. "You secured your billions, Vance. I secured my life." Vance watched them for a moment, the ruined man and the powerful woman, then disappeared down the alley. Within the hour, the news broke. The near collapse of the Singapore deal, combined with the public scandal of the shelter demolition attempt, proved fatal. The board, having secured the money, used the rest of Amara's legal leverage to swiftly oust Vance for massive ethical and financial misconduct. The empire shifted direction. Forced by market panic and public fury, the new leadership had to adopt the ethical stance Darius had championed. From then on, the corporate focus was on giving, not greed, a direct and lasting consequence of Amara's bravery and Darius's sacrifice. Darius never returned to the glass tower. He didn't need to. He had learned compassion could command power far more enduringly than fear. His new power was quiet, earned with his hands, and rooted in the soil they had saved. He was the unpaid executive director of the Chun Community Trust. The shelter's door swung open. Amara stood there, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Ready to go look at blueprints, partner?" Darius smiled, his hands raw, his purpose secured. He had become the man his father had wanted him to be, not by inheriting wealth, but by earning purpose. He was finally home. Do you think Amara should have kept the Singapore money and destroyed Vance? Or was her choice to save the shelter the ultimate victory? Let the debate begin. The weeks that followed the storm were quiet. They were filled not with the roar of bulldozers or the sharp ring of phone calls, but with the measured sound of hammers and the low hum of genuine work. Darius and Amara were a team now, bound not by a contract, but by a crisis survived. The silence between them was the deepest shift of all. It was a silence earned after the chaos had cleared, replacing the tension of their past with the easy rhythm of shared purpose. They spent their mornings together at the Greenwood site, where the first 10 houses, paid for by Vance Calder's defeated money, were rising from the mud. Darius worked as the site foreman and general laborer, his hands permanently calloused now, his mind focused entirely on foundations and roof trusses. Amara, the head of the Chun Community Trust, handled the logistics, the permits, and the budgets. She moved with an efficiency that made Darius's old corporate machine look sluggish. The days were simple. They shared a thermos of coffee at 7. They ate dry sandwiches together at noon, sitting on concrete blocks, discussing only lumber prices and volunteer schedules. There were no words about the boardroom, no mention of the billions lost, and absolutely no reference to the moment Darius stood in the rain, ready to give up his last penny. The past was toxic, and they simply refused to breathe it in. Darius often caught himself watching her, not with the calculated assessment of an employer, but with the quiet wonder of a man seeing clearly for the first time. He noticed the way she spoke to the children at the shelter, not with pity, but with a direct, firm kindness. He noticed the tiny flecks of paint in her hair after a long day. He noticed that she never leaned on him for advice. She asked for information and then made the final, correct decision herself. He felt the greatest peace he had ever known. He was financially ruined, but every action he took had immediate, tangible results. A wall raised, a window installed, a family moving off the sidewalk. He was no longer building an empty legacy for a ghost. He was building real life for real people. Amara was the anchor to this new reality. She had forced him to look at the world, and now she was showing him how to live in it. The subtle emotional shift was unmistakable. It was in the easy way she passed him a screwdriver, the way their shoulders occasionally brushed without awkwardness, the way she knew exactly which tasks to assign him to challenge his mind without overwhelming his still recovering spirit. This quiet, shared life felt like the ultimate reward, the sweet, calm moment before the final curtain call. But sometimes, when he looked at her at the end of a long day, a deep, unsettling sadness would cross her face, a look of profound resolution, like someone finishing a difficult, necessary task. It was a warning he didn't dare acknowledge. The small crack that suggested their shared silence was a delicate, temporary thing. Darius went from a corporate monster to an unpaid laborer. Would you walk away from everything you knew to pursue what's right? Tell me, what would you sacrifice your fortune for? The unsettling look on Amara's face became reality one crisp, early morning. Darius arrived at the shelter at 6 a.m., coffee in hand, ready for the routine. He found Sister Margaret sweeping the entrance. "Good morning, Margaret. Is Amara inside?" Margaret stopped sweeping, her expression unusually soft. "She left last night, Darius." Darius's heart stopped. He felt the mud and the rain and the corporate rage all rushing back at once. Left? Where? The Greenwood site. No, she left for good. Margaret pointed to the newly rebuilt desk in the small office. "There's a note for you." Darius walked to the desk, his legs shaky. His eyes landed on a perfectly folded piece of paper, not the demanding blueprints of their new life, but a letter, written in the same clean, precise script he remembered from the old grocery lists. He picked it up, feeling the finality of the paper, and unfolded it. The letter was short, but every word felt carved in stone. "Darius, you had everything, wealth, status, power, but you did not have love. Not the kind that lets you look at the world without fear. That's what I came to show you." Your father's legacy was never the company. It was the ability to build something that mattered. When he left you that old trust fund, the one I used to secure the Greenwood land, I hope you forgave the deception. He wasn't trying to save your money. He was giving you the means to save your soul. My job here is finished. I saved the shelter, and I saved you from Vance. I also saved you from me. Because if I stayed, you would eventually see me not as your partner, but as the proof of your transformation, the badge of your redemption. You would start to rely on me, and that would make you weak again. The ultimate victory isn't winning a fight. It's making sure the fight never has to happen again. You are strong now. You are honest. You are free. Don't look for me. Share it instead. Share the love and the purpose you found in the quiet days. Build the houses, lead the trust, and keep that kindness that won the war. I wish you peace. Amara. Darius crumpled the letter in his hand, a primal, painful sound catching in his throat. It was the deepest wound he had suffered since his father's passing, yet it was completely clean. She hadn't left out of anger, but out of unconditional love and final, ruthless logic. He realized the true, final twist. Amara had used his guilt, his anger, and his arrogance to rebuild him, but she never intended to stay and collect the reward. She was never his prize. She was his catalyst. He walked out of the shelter office and stood in the morning light, the first rays of the sun warming his face. He looked at the Greenwood site, where the first 10 homes stood half-finished, solid and real. He was broke, abandoned, and utterly alone once more, but this time, he was standing on a foundation that couldn't be bulldozed. He opened his hand, smoothing the crumpled letter. He took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of damp earth and sawdust. He was still alone, but he wasn't lonely. He had the work. He had the purpose. He had the quiet, terrifying knowledge that love was not something to be possessed, but something to be shared through action. Darius Cole, the former billionaire, the current foreman of a non-profit trust, put the letter in his pocket. He didn't look back. He grabbed his hammer and walked toward the rising sun and the unfinished houses, carrying her final, painful lesson into his new life. Amara's final decision was the hardest choice of all. Do you think Amara was right to leave Darius for his own sake, or should she have stayed and built a life with him? Years passed. The Chun Community Trust flourished. Darius never rebuilt his fortune, but he completed the Greenwood Housing Project, a genuine community of simple, sturdy homes built on the ground he had once wanted to pave over. He lived a life of hammers and sawdust, answering to Amara's silent instructions. He was recognized now, not as the ruthless billionaire, but as the man who walked away from billions to stand in the mud. He became a symbol of what wealth could become if channeled by conscience. His life was full, but it was also profoundly solitary. He had found purpose, but he hadn't found the peace that comes from partnership. He never tried to find Amara. He honored her final request, "Don't look for me. Share it instead." He shared the work, the passion, and the love she had unlocked within him. But every day, in the deep, quiet spaces of his soul, her absence was a dull, constant ache. The only ritual he maintained from his old life was visiting his father's grave. It wasn't an act of mourning anymore, but a simple connection to the man who had set this entire, tumultuous journey in motion. It was a cold, gray afternoon in late autumn. Not raining, but the air held the heavy scent of an impending storm. Darius wore a worn leather jacket, his hands tucked deep into his pockets. He stood before the familiar stone marker, telling his father about the new community center they were planning. He looked down at the granite base, and he froze. Lying neatly at the base of the headstone was a single perfect object, a white umbrella. It wasn't a cheap disposable one. It was sturdy, clean, and meticulously folded. It was the kind of umbrella a person would carry to protect something precious. And it hadn't been there when he visited last month. Darius knelt, his hands trembling. The only person who would ever leave an umbrella, The symbol of a storm, the symbol of protection. At this specific spot was Amara. She had been here. She had watched him. He picked it up, feeling the fresh, clean fabric. A small, folded square of paper was tucked into the handle strap. His heart hammered a desperate, hopeful rhythm against his ribs. He recognized the precise, familiar script instantly. He opened the note. It was only one sentence, a final piece of advice that closed the circle on everything he had learned. The rain doesn't break you. It cleans you. Nothing more. No address, no date, no signature. Just the truth. Darius looked up at the vast, indifferent sky. He wasn't broken, and he had been cleansed. He looked at the white umbrella, a silent assurance that even in her absence, he was protected, remembered, and watched over. The mystery deepened, leaving him in quiet wonder. She was gone, but she was everywhere. He had been given the ultimate confirmation that the kindness he chose to share was reflected back to him by the only person whose opinion truly mattered. He tucked the umbrella under his arm, a new kind of treasure. He turned away from the grave, not with sorrow, but with the profound, solitary knowledge that his redemption was accepted. Darius Cole never saw Marichin again, but he saw her everywhere. He saw her in the sturdy homes they built, in the grateful smiles of the families who moved in, and in the strength of the Chun Community Trust, a name that stood as a permanent, powerful monument to the kind of money that matters. He became a legend in the city, the man who proved you could walk away from everything and gain the one thing money could never buy: integrity. He proved that the quiet heroes, the people doing the work without fanfare or titles, hold the most power of all. The entire journey, from the storm and the terrible, confusing rain of that night, to the single white umbrella at his father's grave, was a testament to the unpredictable nature of genuine transformation. He learned that the rain wasn't a curse, it was a cleaning agent, washing away the toxic layers of his old life until only the real, honest man remained. Years earlier, he had asked Amara why she was crying in the rain. Now he knew the answer. She was simply washing herself clean of the world's expectations. The story of a lost billionaire and the powerful maid was never just about money. It was about seeing the value in what is broken and having the courage to rebuild it, whether it was an old shelter, a damaged relationship, or a ruined soul. It was about recognizing that the greatest asset isn't the one listed on a corporate ledger, but the one you're willing to sacrifice everything for. Vance Calder's empire eventually stabilized, but his name remained synonymous with cruelty. His victory tasted like ash. Darius, the man who chose mud over marble, became the one who truly won. If you ever see someone crying in the rain, remember this story. Remember that the greatest battles aren't fought in boardrooms, but on muddy sidewalks. Remember that the real work, the work that matters, often happens in silence, unnoticed, and unpaid. If you've ever felt like the villain in your own story, this is your reminder that redemption isn't bought, it's built, one honest brick at a time. And if you ever feel powerless, remember Amara Chun. She had no money, no title, and no connections, yet she brought down an empire with a pen and a truth the rich had forgotten. We hope this story, full of hard choices and quiet victories, inspires you to look closer at the world around you, and to pick up your own hammer. Hit subscribe if you stand against cruelty. The greedy scroll past, the kind stay. Like this if you'd walk into the rain for someone who deserves better. If not, at least comment why.